My name is Sophia. I am 31 years old. I work as a teacher in a small town. I live in a quiet place where people know each other. Life was simple. I liked my job. I had good friends. I believed in love. I thought love meant kindness, care, and time. But then I met Miguel. Miguel was polite and friendly. He came to my school one day to help with a community project. He smiled at me and said, "You have a nice laugh." I smiled back. I did not know it then, but that small moment would change my life. After that day, he started texting me. "Good morning," he wrote. "I hope your day is good." I felt happy. I waited for his messages. He asked me many questions. He wanted to know my favorite food, my favorite book, and my dreams. He said, "I feel close to you." After 1 month, we became a couple. He took me to the beach. He gave me small gifts. One time he brought me a book and said, "This made me think of you." I started falling in love. I told my friends about him. They said, "He seems sweet, but be careful. It's fast." Miguel did not wait long. After 6 months, he asked me to marry him. We were walking near the sea when he stopped and said, "I want to wake up next to you forever. Will you marry me?" I cried and said yes. Our wedding was small. My parents were happy. His family smiled. I wore a simple white dress. Miguel looked at me and whispered, "You are the best thing in my life." I believed him. The first year of marriage was calm. We ate dinner together. We watched movies. On Sundays, we walked in the park. Sometimes he surprised me with flowers or a kiss on the cheek. I felt lucky. I told myself, this is love. This is what I always wanted. But slowly, things changed. Miguel started coming home late. He didn't explain. He said, "Work was busy." I said, "Okay." I trusted him. But he stopped asking me how my day was. He stopped looking at me when we talked. I felt something was wrong, but I didn't want to believe it. I tried to do more. I cooked his favorite food. I cleaned the house well. I wore his favorite dress. But he didn't notice. He looked tired. He looked far away. I asked, "Are you okay?" He said, "I'm fine. Just tired." One night I waited for him. I made pasta, his favorite. It was already 9 p.m. When he came home, I said, "I made dinner." He looked at the table and said, "I already ate." He walked to the sofa and turned on the TV. I sat alone. I looked at the food. I lost my appetite. Another day, I saw his phone on the table. A message came. It said, "Can't wait to see you again." The name was not saved. I asked, "Who is this?" He grabbed the phone and said, "Don't touch my stuff." I said, "I'm your wife. Why are you hiding things?" He stood up and said, "Stop acting crazy." Then he left the house. That night, I didn't sleep. I looked at the ceiling. My heart felt heavy. I asked myself, what did I do wrong? I remembered our wedding. I remembered the way he looked at me. That man was gone. The next day, I made coffee. He took the cup without saying thank you. He sat on the sofa, scrolling on his phone. I looked at him and felt cold inside. He used to say, "I love your smile." Now he didn't even look at my face. I tried talking to him again. I said, "Please tell me what's wrong." He said, "You always ask too many questions." I asked, "Do you still love me?" He didn't answer. I felt invisible. Weeks passed. The house felt like a quiet hotel. He came and went. He didn't say much. He didn't ask if I was okay. I cried in the bathroom so he wouldn't see. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to understand. One weekend, he was gone all day. He said nothing about where he went. He came home late and his shirt smelled like perfume. Not my perfume. I looked at him and said, "Are you with someone else?" He didn't shout. He didn't even act surprised. He just said, "That's none of your business." I felt like my heart broke into pieces. I told my best friend Marta. She said, "You gave him love. He gave you silence." I cried. I said, "Why did he marry me if he didn't love me?" Marta said, "Some people want comfort, not love. You were kind. That's what he wanted." I sat with her words for days. Was I just easy? Was I just someone to fill space? I looked at our wedding photos. I remembered how proud I felt to be his wife. Now I felt shame. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face looked tired. My eyes looked sad. I didn't smile anymore. One morning, Miguel forgot his phone at home. I didn't plan to look. But the screen lit up. It was a picture from a woman. She was holding a glass of wine and smiling. The message said, "Wish you were here." I sat down. My hands were cold. I read old messages. "You make me happy," he had written to her. "I feel alive with you." I felt sick. He never said those things to me anymore. When he came home, I was quiet. He saw his phone on the table. He looked at me. "Did you go through it?" I said, "I saw enough." He didn't say sorry. He just said, "Well, now you know." I said, "Why did you marry me?" He shrugged. "You were nice. It seemed right at the time." That answer broke me more than the affair. I was not special to him. I was just easy to be with. I gave him love. He gave me emptiness. That night I packed a small bag. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just left. I went to Marta's place. She opened the door and hugged me. I felt safe. I felt like someone saw me again. I was not ready to move on. I was not ready to smile. But I knew one thing. I would not live like that anymore. I stayed at Marta's house for a few days. She gave me a room, clean towels, and a warm blanket. She made tea for me every evening. She didn't ask too many questions. She just said, "Rest. You don't need to explain everything now." At night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. My heart felt quiet, but not peaceful. It felt empty. I remembered how happy I was when Miguel asked me to marry him. I remembered the little notes he once wrote. Where did that man go? Or was he never really there? On the third morning, I called my job and said I needed time off. My voice shook when I spoke, but my manager was kind. "Take all the time you need," she said. I thanked her and hung up. I sat in the kitchen with Marta. She asked, "What are you going to do?" I shook my head. "I don't know." She looked at me and said, "You don't have to decide everything now, but you can't live in the dark anymore. You were not the one who lied." Her words made me feel stronger. That afternoon, I went back to the house. I knew Miguel would be at work. I didn't want to see him. I just wanted to collect my things. I walked into our home, no, his home now, and looked around. Everything felt cold. The sofa, the chairs, even the light. I used to love this place. Now I just wanted to leave. I packed my clothes, my books, and my favorite mug. I took my wedding ring off and placed it on the table. Then I wrote a short note. "You broke something I gave with love. You didn't protect it. I hope one day you understand what that means." That night I cried again, but only a little, not like before. This time, the tears didn't come from confusion. They came from truth. I stayed with Marta for 1 month. During that time, I read books, went for walks, and sometimes just sat by the window. I watched the wind move through the trees. Life felt slower, but something inside me began to wake up. One morning, Marta said, "Let's go out. Just for lunch." I didn't want to at first, but she smiled and said, "You need fresh air. Come on." We went to a small cafe near the lake. The place was quiet. A few people sat outside, reading or drinking coffee. As we waited for our food, a man walked in. He looked about my age. He smiled at the waiter and said, "The usual, please." Then he sat at the table next to us and opened a notebook. I looked at him for a second, then looked away. After a few minutes, he said to the waiter, "Can I have extra honey with my tea? My mom says honey helps with a tired heart." I smiled without meaning to. He noticed. He looked at me and said kindly, "Sorry, did I say that too loud?" I said, "No." It was nice. My mother used to say the same thing. He smiled. Mothers are wise. Then he went back to writing. We didn't talk more that day, but for the first time in weeks, I felt human again. Seen. Not invisible. Later, Marta said, "He was sweet. You smiled." I said, "Only a little." She said, "That's more than yesterday." Over the next few weeks, I went back to the same cafe. Sometimes I saw him. His name was Daniel. He was a writer. He came there to work on his book. We didn't always talk, but when we did, it felt easy. He asked me what I did. I told him I was a teacher. He said, "That's a beautiful job. Helping people grow." I smiled and said, "Sometimes I wonder if I've grown myself." He looked at me gently and said, "You're growing now." One afternoon he asked, "Can I walk you home?" I said yes. We didn't hold hands. We didn't talk about deep things, but I liked the way he walked beside me. Not ahead, not behind, just beside. When I reached Marta's door, he said, "Thank you for letting me share this moment with you." I said, "Thank you for being kind." That night, I thought of Miguel for the first time in days. But this time, it didn't hurt the same. The pain was smaller. It was still there, but far away. A few days later, I went to visit my parents. I hadn't told them everything, only that Miguel and I were taking a break. My mother hugged me for a long time. My father made coffee and said, "You can stay as long as you like." I knew they were worried, but they didn't push me to explain. In the evening, I sat outside with my mom. The sky was pink and orange. She said, "You don't have to tell me the details. I just want to know. Are you safe?" I said, "Yes. I'm hurt, but I'm safe now." She touched my hand and said, "That's enough for me." Back at Marta's, I started to write again. I used to love writing small poems and short stories. I stopped doing that after I got married. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I didn't have time. Maybe I just forgot myself. Now, each morning, I wrote something, even just a few lines. Even if it wasn't good, it made me feel like me again. Daniel still came to the cafe. Sometimes he brought me a flower or a funny story. We became friends. That's all. But it was good. Safe. One day he said, "You have a quiet strength. I can see it." I didn't know what to say. Nobody ever told me that before. That night I looked in the mirror. I still saw someone tired, but I also saw someone brave. Someone who left a cold house and chose warmth. Someone who walked away from pain, even when she was scared. I knew my story wasn't over. One morning, I opened my email and saw a message from Miguel. It said, "Can we talk?" That was all. No hello. No sorry. Just those 4 words. I stared at the screen for a while. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Fear? Curiosity? I didn't answer right away. I waited 1 day, then 2. Finally, I replied, "What do you want to say?" He sent back, "I miss you. I made a mistake." My heart didn't move. Months ago, those words would have made me cry. But now, they felt empty. Like an old song I used to love, but couldn't listen to anymore. I didn't write back. That weekend, I went to visit my sister. She has 2 small children. When I walked in, they ran to me and shouted, "Auntie Sophia!" I hugged them tightly. Their little arms reminded me that love can still feel good. My sister looked at me and said, "You seem lighter, happier." I smiled and said, "Maybe I am." On the way home, I thought about everything, about the way Miguel changed, about the silence, the cold looks, the lies, about how I tried to fix everything alone. I used to blame myself. I used to ask, what did I do wrong? But I didn't ask that question anymore. I knew the truth. He didn't love me the way I loved him. He loved the way I made him feel, important, strong, needed. But he didn't see me. He didn't protect my heart. And that's not love. I no longer felt ashamed. A few days later, Daniel and I sat at our usual cafe. It was quiet. A little wind moved the trees outside. He looked at me and said, "Do you ever want to love again?" I thought about it. I took a sip of my tea and said, "Yes, but not now. I want to love myself first." He smiled. "That's a good answer." We talked for a long time that day, not about love or pain, but about books, food, travel. I laughed, really laughed. The kind of laugh that starts deep in the chest and feels warm all the way through. It had been a long time since I laughed like that. Over the next few months, I slowly rebuilt my life. I moved into a small apartment close to school. It wasn't big, but it had sunlight in the morning and a small balcony where I could drink tea. I hung up photos of my family and friends. I put my favorite books on the shelf. I bought a yellow pillow that made me smile. Every small thing felt like a step toward peace. One evening, I opened a box of old things. Inside was my wedding photo. I looked at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt done. I put the photo back in the box and closed it. One day at school, a student asked me, "Miss Sophia, why don't you wear a ring?" I smiled and said, "Because sometimes the wrong ring has to come off before the right one can find you." She nodded like she understood, even if she didn't fully. Daniel and I stayed friends. Maybe that's all we'll ever be. Maybe not. But I don't worry about it. He respects me. He listens. That is enough for now. Sometimes I still hear from Miguel. A short message. A small question. "How are you?" I never answer. He had my heart once. He broke it with silence. Now I protect it myself. One afternoon, I stood by my window and watched the rain fall. The drops hit the glass gently. The world felt quiet. I held a cup of warm tea and thought, this is peace. This is mine. I didn't need big things. Not a big house. Not a perfect man. I just needed to feel safe. To feel seen. To feel like myself again. And I did. I know many women stay in cold marriages. They stay because they are scared, or tired, or because they hope things will change. I understand that. I was almost one of them. But I'm here to say, you can leave. You can choose yourself. You can heal. It takes time. It takes pain. But you can do it. I am not broken anymore. I am not weak. I am not alone. I am Sophia. I am 31 years old. I walked away from someone who didn't love me. And I am proud of that.